Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk, and this is the show where we talk about all the things related to making music. Today, I have a special guest, a fellow Ableton Certified Trainer, Drew Mayhills. Drew, how are you, sir?
I'm well. What's up, Brian? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I know right now it's almost 7 p.m. here in New York, and where you are in Australia, it is about 7 a.m., I understand.
The sun is literally just rising out the window. Yeah.
That is something really fun about that. You know, the sun is getting ready to go down and the colors are starting to change in the sky. It's pretty interesting that on the other side of the world, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I'm a morning dude, so this works for me.
Cool.
It's all good.
Well, I appreciate that very much. So thanks for being on the show. So you've got some cool things going on that we'll get to talk about. You have a new release coming out very soon, and you're doing music with meditation and yoga. I'm very, as you know, we've been talking for a few minutes before we started the show, and we had to kind of just cut that short so we don't do the show before we start the show.
Yeah, curb the enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yep. So maybe I can ask you how you like to describe what you do to people.
Okay. You know, that used to really stump me because I like to do a bunch of stuff, right? And it's always it's almost like a cliche when you ask artists, right? Oh, you know, I can't put it into words or whatever.
I'm uncategorizable.
Yeah, well, I think what I think's funny about that is that you know, in the way people access music today, it kind of you kind of got to categorize it on some level. But I had a really nice write up in an online blog not so long ago, and they said visceral, emotive, electronica, and you know what? I was like, you know, I was never going to say that, but I'm really happy with that. That's what I like to do. I like to make stuff that is emotive and that elicits some kind of response, you know, and that I guess that's probably more important to me than where the genre lands, because sometimes I'll make stuff that's kind of heavy and gnarly, and other times I want to make stuff that's really beautiful and chill and serene, and either way it's gonna be visceral and emotive, and so that I feel really comfortable with that, you know, and my favorite artists tend to do that as well. You know, they have a real spectrum to their sound.
Yeah, that was something that struck me about your work as I've been delving into it, is that especially I'd say like the newer stuff that's coming out shortly, which, you know, we'll definitely get to. That's kind of aggressive. That's got some energy and that sort of emotion. But then some of the other stuff is like really peaceful and calming and soothing. And I really like that in an artist, that they show a range of emotion and it's not just this one thing over and over again. And I think you're doing a really nice job with that.
I appreciate you saying that. That's pretty intentional. And you know, it's funny because there are bands and artists that I love that have been making one flavor forever, and that's their thing. You know, that's their brand. Like I think it's probably not they may or may not be a massive hit with listeners of the podcast, but if you take a band like Slayer, right? Slayer have been making Slayer music for a long time, and I don't know, with all due respect to Slayer songs kind of are pretty much locked into a style guide. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And you know it immediately, and that's cool too. I know that though, that for me, like it's really important that I channel whatever I'm feeling that day in the production, and so it's nice that that there's an opportunity to make serene, chill stuff, and then more aggressive stuff. And like you say, the more recent tracks were probably I was probably channeling a lot more frustration and anger and aggression in a positive way, and it came out that way. But now I'm working on some stuff right now that is, it doesn't sound like it came out of the same guy, but I'm just, you know, continually evolving, I guess.
Yeah, very cool. And yeah, you make a good point. Like a band like Slayer, you're showing up for Slayer for a very specific reason, you know.
And the thing is, the Slayer fan base are down for that. Yeah, and the fan base is into that. That's what they came for, right? I think, I guess from the outset, I'm interested in creating dynamic and variety. And I guess that also means that when I'm doing shows, if I'm on a bill with more chill bands, then I can kind of sculpt a set to suit that. You know, I've got a show coming up that's with more like a hip hop crew, right? It's like beat battles and stuff, and that's probably not the time to play my more mellow stuff, but it's actually a time to kind of shapeshift and do some of that sort of action.
Yeah, a little musical chameleon type thing.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I'd add to that is that irrespective of the style and the genre choice, being authentic, and I know that's quite like that gets hashed out a lot, but you know, making honest creative choices and being really intentional about that, so that I've found that people will listen to maybe a mellow track or an aggressive track, but they'll say things like, yeah, it kind of still sounds like you, or like, no, I feel that anyway. And that's, I think that's an intentional quality rather than like a stylistic thing.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Let me ask you this, because I've been, as maybe some people that have listened know, playing around with artist name, you know, and losing the artist name. And I know some people, what they wind up doing when they have like such diverse types of sounds, they section it off. This is one project and this is another project with a totally different name. Do you feel the need to do that, or is that just you're just you? So you how does that work for you?
Yeah, do you know, it's I got heaps. Just I have to say that as you're asking me this, I listened to your podcast about this topic with great interest, right? Because it for sure has plagued me in the past, in bands. Like, you know, you choose a band name, and it invariably, on some level, sucks. You know, it makes sense at the time, or it represents a compromise with band members or whatever, and probably a bit like you, I was always I played a lot in bands and didn't necessarily love the band names, and I was just like, man, why? Like, I think you raised it as a question. Why do we do this? Like, why are we so insistent on like stamping it with something, right? And when I started making music primarily by myself, I was like, I had that same question, and I was like, well, I can't think of anything cool. History would point to the fact that when I've chosen names that I think are cool, they eventually become uncool. And what can I pick that's going to sort of remain somewhat timeless? And I'm like, well, my name is kind of you know, it's a relatively unique name. There's like a town in America somewhere called Mayhill, right? And I think there's maybe a Mayhill town in the UK as well. But besides that, there's no naming rights to compete with. But the other thing is, like, a bit like the genre comment, it's me. So it also kind of in a funny way forces me to be like, am I cool with putting this out and my name being on it? And it's like a final little quality assurance check, you know.
Yeah,
so I'm chill with it. It's at times I'm like, oh, should I have gone with Drew Mayhills over Mayhills? And then I think, man, who cares? No one actually cares, you know. And so the level of I guess ego in that and around names is kind of funny to me. And I just think by just picking my last name, ticking that box, moving on, I think it gets back to actually what the point is, which is meant to be making cool tunes. But that's how I'm rationalizing it at the moment. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I like what you say, and this idea of like, am I okay with putting this out under my true identity? You know, is definitely a nice like final kind of you know, fail safe, I guess. I think it's cool. What I like about your name, Mayhills, as an artist, is that it's your name, so that's like makes good sense. But it also, it's the kind of word that could sort of like mean something else too, if you didn't know. And kind of like Willits, Christopher Willits, in a way. Like it's kind of like a word you will understand when you hear it, and it's cool. It's simple. It's to the point, and it doesn't. it doesn't come with any sort of like weird, like I've always felt after DJ Mac, I'm like DJ, like I'm not a DJ. It's not even what I do. But it's just,
what's super funny about the Afro DJ Mac thing is, I guess this just makes the point that you were speaking about, is it never once occurred to me that it was actually a play on aphrodisiac. Like it just never occurred to me, and I was like, oh wow, that's way cooler now that I know that, but I never was going to pick that up myself. Do you know those? And I don't want to like bag you about that, because I know that you've obviously made that name change recently. But I was, I think the only other thing to say is that it's easy to spell, right? So like you can probably guess how to spell it. Same with Brian Funk, and also that it doesn't feel locked into a genre,
Yeah.
And I know that that there's a bridge to cross around funk as the last name in the genre and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just I just think the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into names is in a lot of cases unjustified.
Yeah, it is. It's I'm so glad to be over it. This is really was something that plagued me for years. Really, as soon as I made my website, and I was like, oh, I just bought this domain. Now I'm stuck, and oh no, now like 50 people know who I am. I'm stuck, and it just kept getting deeper and deeper, and I'm just so glad. And it's so funny too, because like you said, like no one really cares. It doesn't really matter.
No one cares. And look. Do you know what I was thinking about the other day? Is a lot of noise online and stuff about Tool putting their music on Spotify, and of course new music from Tool, and the global army of Tool fans are a pretty significant force. But like zoom out and look at the name Tool. Like outside of the context of that music, I don't think many people would go, hey, sweet band name.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that. But now it's because of everything around it that you buy into that. And I think that's true of like heaps of other names, like Kiss, stuff like that. That's infinitely cooler because you've heard the music and you've bought into the culture of what the music is. The word itself, I think, is kind of in a lot of cases, a non-issue.
Yeah, like those are two band names I would think, and I'm like, those are kind of cool, But I would never have picked them. I would have never.
Yeah.
It's because they're cool, because of what they did, that it's a cool name, and so whatever,
I think then the better question becomes, okay, so how do I move towards music that is cool?
Right. Yeah. That'll make the name cool. Again, this is like, I don't know, what is that expression with the horse and the cart, putting the cart before the horse kind of thing.
Exactly, man. Like I feel like if you have great tunes and you're musically engaging, then I think there's a lot more what would you say? I think people are much more willing to do the heavy lifting around the name if the music's there.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a form of maybe avoiding the work, where I gotta get the band name right, and then the logo,
100%,
and then we can worry about the music.
Yeah. You got to get the merch sorted too, right? You got to get merch. You got to have heaps of social media lined up. Coming soon. Like you got to do everything except the actual stuff that matters, right. and then you'll be ready.
Once the package is ready, we can put something in it.
Exactly.
That's funny. So, do you want to tell me a little about this new record, Get Offended? This with the bloody fist on the cover.
I'm
really nice
I'm
guy,
super happy to
friendly. In your album cover,
that comes up.
It's pretty. That
does come up a lot. Yeah, I mean, people do say that like, hey man, like a guy at work actually. I played on the radio a little while ago, and I'm pretty discreet about my music making at work because I don't really want to make a fuss about it. I don't want to be talking about it all day at work, and I just want to kind of go about my job and just carry on, But I played on the radio the other night, and local radio here in Perth in Western Australia, and a guy came up. He's like, "Hey, dude, I have no idea that you make this crazy music outside of work. Like, you're really nice and really mellow. Like, is everything okay? And it's like, yeah, man, absolutely, everything's totally cool. I think the reason I'm probably if anything, the reason I appear nice and friendly and approachable and stuff like that is because I kind of channel out that frustration through the music, you know. And like get offended was just I thought it was talking about cool names. I was like, I liked the idea of an instructional title, you know, and actually asking people to do that. And I guess it was just it was a different form of inspiration. So like I was reading or watching videos or something about just the current levels of outrage, you know, culture and how things like Facebook algorithms are dialed in to ensure that your news feed has stuff that elicits an irritation, right, or anger in your, because it just means you're gonna do more stuff in Facebook, which basically means the advertising dollars go further, right? So, and there was kind of like a dystopian quality to that, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. Like this is the world we're living in, right? And I guess it kind of pissed me off, to be honest. And so I went into my production session that morning, kind of annoyed, and that I guess pent up frustration just came through musically. And so then I did a video with someone recently for that song, and it was quite fun collecting all this material for it, but it's just different Creative Commons approved footage from the 20s and the 30s of stuff that I think kind of probably warrants being offended by, you know, like stuff like war, famine, protest, and seeing all this stuff in the 1920s, you know, where life is actually pretty tough and probably warrants being offended. I was like, you know, I think that's probably worth just checking back on in relation to what's driving outrage culture and being offended today, you know, like, so there is some thought and some thinking behind that. But yeah, it's a therapeutic thing for me, you know. If I'm making heavy music, it's just because I guess I was feeling pretty heavy that day, and even then sometimes I listen back to it and I go, whoa, what was happening for you that day, dude? You know what I mean? Like, because it's not my that's not my natural resting state, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So you didn't feel like getting on Twitter and just like lashing out on anyone instead? You wanted to make a record?
Yeah, man. I just think look at those two examples, right? You can create something, right?
Yeah.
That actually will have value after the fact, I hope, and be a cool snapshot of that point in time and a creative expression of that moment. Or you can throw some tweets into the vacuum, and I don't know. If I compare those two, I'm sure there's lots of stuff on Twitter that is valuable. I just look at the two scenarios and I'm like, which one's actually going to leave me feeling better and be more enduring? And so it's like, yeah, you won't see me doing much Twitter rampaging. I just don't. There's just not enough motivation there for me to make me want to do that. So I'd rather be reflecting those situations musically.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not going to say the world's perfect or anything. Obviously, there's lots of stuff going on and we're more and more aware of it than ever before. But there's definitely this kind of like outrage for fun, recreational type of activity that goes on. And, you know, it is a little, and it's kind of upsetting to know that some of these platforms we use are playing into that. You know, we'll throw you that thing that's, you know, we have all the info about who you are. We know you better than you know yourself. So we know you're gonna hate this. So
yes, I know. And I just get, yeah, I mean, that, look, you talk about the title, that kind of offends me. That's sort of, that I find that annoying, you know, and that, and I think, I think that it's really important to look at the outputs of when you choose to do something. And I know that, you know, I feel a little bit hypocritical in a sense because, you know, I have a base level of participation or engagement with Instagram and things like that for my music. And it's actually it's a channel that I absolutely use to promote what I do and share it. But at the same time, you know, I'm pretty what would you say? I monitor and moderate my use of that stuff quite a bit, and I don't think I do quite enough around it. But I also know that if I did much more than I'm doing, I wouldn't feel that great about it. Music making music makes me feel healthy and good, and overindulging on social media leaves me feeling unhealthy and bad. So that's just how it is for me. That's my relationship to it. So, I think I'm like a minimum required participation kind of guy with that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I'm probably along those lines myself too. It's important to realize like that it is really playing on your pleasure sensors in your brain, and it's designed to keep you interacting, and it is very easy to lose yourself in hours and hours of scrolling and whatever. So
What's kind of funny about that is that it's dangerously close to where you make music, right? So
yes, it is. It's the same thing almost.
yeah, like it's a I've found it really beneficial of late to actually turn Wi-Fi off in the studio, and that's definitely not my idea. But look, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for just creating the conditions for your creativity to really thrive. And I don't know. Some people might disagree with that, and that's fine. But I would say that social media and actually getting finished musical outcomes that don't suck aren't that compatible. At least in my experience.
Oh yeah, I think you have a very strong point. There's something I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that you mentioned too, is finding ways. You have some discipline to how you work, and finding ways to get stuff done and stay focused and on track and finish projects. And I guess turning off the internet is one of your techniques. I think this is the problem for the modern producer. I mean, we have the tools. We don't lack for anything. Even if you only have the intro version of your DAW, you are ready to go. I mean, you are, so maybe we can get into that a little bit, because
Yeah,
I
totally.
could use some wisdom. I think everyone listening could. It's not a battle you ever win, so it's always good to refresh and talk about it.
Yeah. Look, I think man,
What's
it was
working for you these days? You just finished a record.
Well, I think, do you know, a big part of it is that I've already kind of put things in place that demand that I'm accountable to it. I've started telling people about it. I think that's a big part of it.
The accountability.
Oh my God, yeah. And I guess I feel like I feel fortunate in that I have a bit of a head start on things that improve your productivity, because my day job is an organizational coach, right? So, I work with people and have conversations about why, essentially trying to get to the heart of why something's not happening and what needs to change in order for that thing to happen, right? And that sounds kind of deceptively simple, but there's often a lot of layers of onion to be peeled back to get to the heart of it. Maybe for someone it might be, I actually at the base level don't think this is good enough to share, and I'm scared that I'm going to be judged poorly for it. I feel like there's an infinite number of excuses you could make for that, and for sure, I mean, even there's like this kind of exciting point where you're putting something out through your streaming services and it's into the distributor, and actually like now it's going to be out there, and you know what? There's, in all likelihood, someone's going to hear it and go, "This sucks." That's going to happen, right? I'm okay with that. And the more I can get over that kind of stuff and back myself a little bit more, that's definitely one thing that helps. I think the other thing is that I chunked out what I could do, and as someone working full time and with other things in life that and people in my life that are really important, that take up an aspect or some chunks of time, I kind of worked backwards, and I was like, well, okay, what can I actually commit to that I can see through? Because sometimes we're maybe overly aspirational or ambitious about what we think we can get done. I kind of worked out that what I can do without putting myself under like a ridiculous amount of pressure or stress is I can release a track a month. I can do that, and my songs tend to be quite short anyway, right? So like they're like between 2 and 3 minutes usually, and and I like my songwriting to be really lean. You know, I'm not trying to write a 13-minute opus. I don't know if I've got what it takes, and I don't know if the average listener has the attention span to make it through. So so you know, short, lean tunes, and I can commit to one of those a month. I've got a backlog of stuff, and I can get a song to a point where I'm actually happy to share it on a monthly basis. And I've started. I suppose I've kind of initiated the process of telling people in press and interviews and media releases and stuff that's what's happening. And now I've kind of, as a consequence, it's like the same kind of thing if you tell someone you're going to run a marathon or something, right?
Yeah.
Now you're going to look pretty stupid if you don't see that through. So that's kind of a helpful external pressure that I think I've been able to activate. The other thing is, and these aren't my ideas, but I do find them really beneficial, is, you've got, and actually it's a shout out to you in many ways, because, the 10, forgive me for getting the title wrong, it's like 10 ways to like ramp up your productivity or something like that. Previous podcast?
Yeah, some clicky.
It was yeah. There you go. I remember the clickbait reference, but it was all the mise-en-scène stuff around, like, basically having your template ready, having presets ready.
Produce like a chef, maybe, was it?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's the one. And that stuff is just super critical. Like I've realistically got maybe an hour a day to really do some high value work, and it's first thing in the morning. So, I want to roll out of bed, go into the studio, and hit new live set, and I would say like 80-90% of what needs to happen has already happened in order for me to dive in and start making. Like, this is not the time to be tidying up the sample library or whatever. It should be like, what's going to happen. So definitely the prep and the consistent time. I've tried different times of day and night and worked out that I'm a morning person. I feel bad for my colleagues because I say after about 10 a.m. it's kind of all downhill. but unfortunately I'm being paid from 9 to 5, so I'm going to be at my most valuable and productive first thing in the morning, and time boxing my ideas, which is again not my idea, not my strategy, but if I can't get something cool happening, like an inspirational idea, within 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll put a timer on for that, it's probably time to move on. Yeah. Like, just be ruthless about the law of the law of diminishing returns. Like, if anyone who's been working on like a kick drum for 3 hours or whatever, you haven't really been working on a kick drum. You've been sort of deluding yourself into thinking that things are moving forward, and you're just wigging out. And and then of course you'll be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll just watch one more YouTube tutorial and really solve that problem. And I just think it's a vortex, man. And as you said, like, we've got more tools than ever, and yet people seem to be able to make more excuses than ever, and feel like more overwhelmed than ever. So it's like, what are the parameters or the boundaries we can impose on ourselves that are going to be helpful?
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
I think so. Well, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that idea of like a track a month is great, and it sounds very doable. It's not, like you said, it's not overwhelming. It's what I've done with I guess my packs. I have my subscription club, who I've promised I'm going to give you something every month. So I have to do it, or else I'm in trouble. I'm on the hook. And to say, like, when you're being interviewed or talking to people that, I do it one a month, like, now you're held up to it. And that's really important. I had a conversation with Tommy Z yesterday, and the podcast will be out, I guess, right before this one comes out.
Sure.
And he does music for brands, and he's like commercials and things like that. And what he says is like, I have these like super strict deadlines, and I get hit, and like they need it in a week or tomorrow or whatever. And it's like, with my music, I don't have that. There's no one waiting for me to produce my own original tracks for my art, my artistic side. And that's and for someone like him who's so productive putting out music commercially, he has the same problems like everyone else has when it comes to being the artist side. And it's those like self-imposed deadlines, and or for him it's not self-imposed at all. It's somebody like in the where's my track, waiting.
Yeah.
And
It's so weird to me that when it's an external influence, we just kind of like we straighten up and deliver, and
Yeah.
when it's so bizarre to me that when it comes to actually doing the right thing by yourself, how like the rules go out the window,
Yeah,
and suddenly it's like you just wouldn't treat anyone else that way, you wouldn't like, oh sorry man, can't make it today, but we do it to ourselves over and over again, and look, that's not a holier than thou comment, because I've definitely had my fair share of that, but I also kind of I guess I got tired of making excuses in a way, and I was just thinking, man, like this is just ridiculous, like, and I think my wife was a very positive influence in that way, because I think at one point she was like, you're in the studio a lot, and I hear a lot of weird sounds, and like what are you actually doing? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to show you. I'm going to put tracks out, and now it's funny, like 6 months, a year later, she's like, oh wow, so like you're really doing stuff now, and I said, yeah, see. So like sometimes just those people who are close to you can kind of prompt a bit of encouragement in a way as well. But I think that a track a month is something that is I can buy into, and I can actually deliver on that, and also like that sense of momentum. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Yeah, I'm actually at 12 songs a year. I'm like I don't know. I know albums have kind of disintegrated in a sense in the streaming environment, but that kind of feels like an album a year to me. Like 12 tunes, that's about, I imagine, what's typically on an album, between like 10 and 13 songs or something.
Yeah, that's how I always kind of pick. Album to me in my head was like 10 songs at least.
But I think also though that like by having just a song a month, I think artists sometimes freak out a little bit about the grandiosity of the album, and it's like, oh, is this going to be like a creative statement that I can stand behind forever? And then there's a lot of stress and money and whatever else about promoting the album and make sure the album is just right. And I kind of like the almost like the agile kind of lessons you can take from track by track, like even releasing one track a month. There's things that I did on the previous release, I'm like, oh man, that was stupid, I'm not gonna do that again. But I kind of got to learn on a pretty low risk level, because I get to have another go at it the next month. So it's kind of like, it's not that I'm taking it less seriously, it's just that there's less kind of involved and there's less on the line every time. So and picking up on your point, like no one cares. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just hilarious to me how much
our art is so important to ourselves.
Yeah, and I get that it's important to me too, but I just put it out there. And when someone said something to me a while ago, which is like, especially people who are kind of sitting on the fence of putting out their first song, and look, I think it's fair to say that your first song is probably gonna suck the most. Like the thing that comes after the first song, hopefully is gonna be better. So. Yeah. I think that's true whether you're writing a novel or like making videos or sound packs or whatever else. It's like, just acknowledge that like your first thing is probably not going to be the best thing ever. Put it out, see how it goes, move on.
It's great advice.
Everyone's probably going to be like, it's not that easy, bro.
But you get over it. It's getting over it too. It's just do it. Just do it. Just do it. And now it's something you do. Like now it's something you do. When you said how the rules go out the window when you try to impose your own deadlines on yourself, you got me thinking. And we talked about like connections before we went on the air, whatever we call this, the air. But it made this connection in my head where I often think about how we are so like mean to ourselves, and we say things to ourselves we would never say to another person. Sometimes if you like listen to what you say, I'm no good, I suck, I'm terrible, I'm ugly, everything you want to say. Like these are things you would never say to another person, but
Yeah,
you can very easily get this going in your head 24/7 if you're not paying attention. Now, with the deadline thing, if you're not going to meet someone's deadline that you're working for, it might be seen as like being disrespectful, and you wouldn't do that. Yet when it comes to ourselves, we're like, and we disrespect ourselves that way by not sticking to what we said we were going to do.
totally. And the self talk thing is so important. Like I feel I catch myself doing that. Like and it is, you're right. It's really mean. It's a very mean voice. My God, that synth sucks. Who would think to play it like that? That's terrible. Like it bums you out. Yeah. And so I feel like one thing I do often do is I have a kind of like a small circle of music producing and or music critic kind of friends, and it's kind of like the inner circle that of like four, 5, 6 people who at any time I can kind of just bang out a bounce of something and go, guys, girls, hit me with this. What, like, and know that there's enough trust and respect there that I'll actually get the feedback, because in sometimes you'll be working on an idea and you'll be thinking, I think this is cool, but sometimes I feel I'm too close to it to tell, and so before I jump to judgment about it, I'll just send the bounce out to some friends and be like, yo, where are you at with this? And they'll go, they're actually really good about giving candid feedback, and they're like, yeah, man, I guess I see where you're going with it, but this part didn't really land. Like they're giving me something more valuable than this sucks. Mm-hmm. But they also the friendship and the trust and everything like that's there for them to be able to go, I don't know if this is as good as you can do, right. And that I can hear that in the spirit in which it's intended, and go, yeah, you're probably right. That's okay. Thanks for that, and move on. So like I think the 80-20 rule is relevant. I think I'm in here most mornings working on something that may or may not emerge, but I'm really happy if every 5 ideas one of them is killer. That's an amazing outcome, right?
That's excellent.
But you're only going to get that by spitting out 4 rubbish ideas.
Yeah, over and over. Yeah, that's a cool idea, to outsource your criticism, to just I don't care how this sounds. I'm not going to be the evil critic, because you need to be the inspired creative. You can't be the inspired creative person and the evil critic at the same time. So maybe I'll try to teach myself to just outsource my criticism. Like let everyone else tell me it sucks.
Have you got like a handful of like close friends or music producer friends who would just listen to something for 30 seconds and just give you their 2 cents?
Yeah, that's going to be their job now.
Yeah. And the thing is, I feel like
sign up right in this room somewhere. Outsource your criticism.
And you can pay it back by doing the same for them.
Yeah. I love doing that. I love hearing what people are working on and getting into their head about it, and it's super fun.
Yeah, and I just think that you are that much more receptive to what someone else has to say, and it's usually way more helpful.
I learn so much hearing things as they're in progress. When a friend's working on a track halfway, and then when I hear the finished product, or even like like the Beatles just came out with their White Album reissue last year, and they got like the demos. I love that. Like, yeah, so fun.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that like sometimes you'll hear something in the demo that, I mean, look, I think there's something to be said about just the fact that listening to someone else's demo is a reminder that other people are out there grinding it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like
Paul McCartney didn't quite have it right yet, George Harrison, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, it's okay at this stage, and then look what it became,
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
It's just I find that inspiring, and I feel like, yeah, he's like me, I'm like him. We're like you said, we're grinding, we're sweating, we're trying to figure this thing out and solve this puzzle.
Yeah, and I feel like what are the things we can do during that process that maximize the fun, you know? And I
Yeah.
think a big part of it, I think a big part of keeping it fun is keeping it moving, right? And that's
Yes.
yeah, and I guess that's why, like, I mean, I'm pretty open about the fact that I do all my writing in live in session view, because it keeps the wheels spinning, like the music keeps moving. And I feel like stopping and starting on a timeline kind of directly interrupts my flow. And I feel like anyone who's read or thought about flow, like when you're in flow, it feels great. So like, maximize your writing process in a way that keeps the beats pumping,
Yeah.
so that it feels good, so that over a couple of years of writing or whatever, you begin to associate that process with fun and engagement and positivity, instead of like negative self-talk and criticism and nothing's working and can't get this song finished. So I just think it's definitely a mindset thing, and at least for me, and I definitely think there are things we can do that give us a much better chance of actually getting the outcomes.
You mentioned before that by releasing a song every month, you notice things that you've done wrong in the last release. Oh, that was silly. I shouldn't have done that. Can you think of any examples or any lessons you've learned about that? Things like
Yeah,
maybe you've done wrong or things you've done better?
yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, certainly when it comes to like promoting releases or getting media releases and stuff written up, or pitching to the wrong blog or something like that, or maybe certainly like there'll be things in a mix, and I'm like, well, that's kind of irritating or bothering me, but literally no one else is going to know. No one's going to hear it, and no one's going to care. And like, so there'll be occasionally mixed decisions or creative decisions where I'm like, you know what, it's in the ballpark. It's no longer beneficial for me to agonize over this. This is good enough, right? And I think like the impossible task for the creative person often is like, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
Well, like, life's not perfect, you're not perfect, so like, how walk me through how this is going to be perfect.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But I think just it's the lessons I've learned of late have been more just around music business interaction than the songs themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like part of my philosophy really is like I'm pretty adamant around creative control and being very, very authentic around what I do and what I put out. And I also acknowledge that means that commercially it may or may not pay my way. So that means retaining a job so I can have total creative control. And I guess that sometimes means that you're putting music out there that might not necessarily be super popular, but that was not really in my success criteria. Do you know what I'm saying? That's actually like, that's not something I'm trying to tick off. Like if it resonates with people, that's awesome. But like, that's not nearly as important to me as being immersed in a creative practice and enjoying it and putting stuff out on a regular basis. Like I just can't be getting caught up in what everyone else thinks about it. It doesn't help.
The practice. That's going to get me to the next topic in a second. But
Sure.
if you don't mind, and if you don't want me to say this, we can take it out because I don't know, sometimes this stuff is private. But you have like the press release that you sent me for the latest release, Get Offended.
Yeah.
Right? And that I would imagine is the result of you doing this over and over again and learning what works and what doesn't. And when I look at this press release, it's got the date where it's going to be available. It's got a nice little paragraph about the track, and then it's got a bit about you and what you do. And it's almost like the article's half written for whoever's going to share this. It's got the image of the album artwork. It's got the contact. It's got all the links in there. And if I'm a blogger, which I guess I am, this to me is like awesome. I'm just going to copy paste, throw in my own 2 cents, and this is not going to take me a long time to get out. So is that like a deliberate part of this process? Is this something you've refined over the time?
Yeah, totally. And you know what? That's I'm super happy to leave that in.
Oh,
And
well,
I'm
yeah,
super,
I thought you would be, but sometimes this is the behind the scenes stuff.
no way. I mean, I think like, I'm super comfortable with that. And I would
Yeah.
say to you that if you're reading that and going, huh, cool. If I'm a blogger, and I kind of am, right? And I would say you are because of the way you engage and put stuff out, which I'm a fan of and appreciate what you do. I would say that's been something I've tried to refine so that people who might pick it up, right? I'm trying to be empathetic and put myself in their shoes, and I imagine. Look, I definitely don't think I've written the world's best press release by any stretch, but I think that document is accessible enough and straightforward enough to make their job as easy as possible. And I'm fairly confident that there's other press releases going around that might not be necessarily as useful and helpful to that person. So it's me putting myself in their shoes and going, okay, what are the things I need to perform my task? And if you're looking at that document and going, yep, all I need to do now is actually like the song enough to care, then I can go forward. Then yeah, that's something I have refined. And yeah, I mean, that's been reflected in recent releases. More people have written back, more people have written stuff. Yeah, make that easy for people because you're actually trying to ask them to help you out, really.
Right. Funny, I think one of the themes of this discussion for me is like all these synapses in my brain connecting. We were talking a little bit about teaching because we both have some experience as teachers. And in my job as a high school teacher, one of the things you do is you get observed by the principals and you write up your lesson and tell them what you're going to do. And a lot of what you get back is kind of your own words restated. And what I've learned to do for these things is kind of write it for them. My lesson plan, what I'm going to do is kind of like what you can put in my observation. And it makes their job easier. Right. And I guess that's in a way like what you're doing with the press release. You're saying to the blogger, hey, this is what's happening. And all you really have to do is share this and it's good to go. Funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny and I connect.
Well, I think it's also a case that, and I guess that's a good example of something I've learned is that when I haven't done that, people have kind of had carte blanche to write what they felt, and sometimes I'd be like, oh man, I don't know if I'm super comfortable with the direction this is going, and so it's an opportunity I think to shape or frame up how you would like the music to be interpreted, but also I think it's about, I mean, the bloggers of the world. I imagine I'm not a blogger. Are just perpetually just bombarded with basically requests to talk about, write about, otherwise draw attention to artists. And I think that, if they're going to do something as kind as that and help you out and help you get your message out about your stuff, I think it's definitely appropriate and reasonable that you help them as much as you can. What's actually in it for them to do this for you? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm trying to do.
And you sort of have control over the narrative in that way too, where you're not going to get pegged in some hole that you're not looking to fill, And
if a track's called yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say if a song's called "Get Offended," I think it's actually pretty smart to give them some context around that before I potentially kind of give them a bum steer into like some sort of that could be without enough. Yeah, absolutely. With especially if it's kind of like a potentially contentious thing, or it's like an edgier kind of topic. I want them to appreciate that it's not just looking for quick thrills, but I'm actually trying to say something meaningful.
Yeah, and you write that in the press release. You say about the video, you wanted to create a provocative video that invites the audience to reconsider the outrage culture that defines our time. And that's there's the story, and that's a lot of what we love about our favorite artists too, is the story of how it happened and how it came together. And so yeah, that's really nice. Again, connections. So you mentioned the fame, the glory is not really as important to you as like the practice of making music. And something that requires lots of practice that you're also very involved in is like music for yoga and meditation, and that's all about the practice. That's it's the act of doing it is itself. That's the reward. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to learn about what you do with that. I saw some of the videos you have on Instagram. They're really cool, interesting, and I there's a big part of me that's into this kind of vibe of music, and that is meditative, and it really kind of spawned out of me just wanting to listen to more music to go to sleep to. But it's really
Cool.
pulled me in this direction where I'm really just kind of into. I like you in a lot of ways. I like my songs like stripped down, no nonsense, cut to the chase. But on the other hand, I'm kind of into these things that take a long time to unfold and develop lately too. So yeah, what's that like? Tell me about your work with yoga and meditation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sometimes I feel like I kind of struck gold in there, that like I've managed to tease together two of my favorite things. You know, these were two things that I always kind of thought, oh, these are like hobby A and hobby B, you know, and they're really important to me, and they're both very like much part of my own, what would you say, like my own identity and my own wellness and health and stuff. I hadn't thought much about how they could be combined until I went to some yoga classes that had music, you know, and they sit around 70 to 75 BPM, and it's really about something very beautiful and interesting happens in the body and the mind, I think, when your breathing is essentially in syncopation with the movement, right? And a musical reference can really help ground that. And so I kind of was like really inspired one day. I was like, you know, I feel like I could make this kind of music. It's very less is more. It's very spacious. It's very ambient. And so that there was kind of some parallels there to my more chill stuff that I like to make. And I just put it out there with some friends who are yoga teachers in yoga studios. I say, hey, would you want to do some sort of collaborative thing? And then the conversation came up, well, yeah, but how will we know when to move tracks from one to the other? And we started talking about session view as it relates to live. And I was basically saying, look, we can have a rehearsal, but I'll basically bring a bunch of flavors or colors, moods that are appropriate to the class. And we'll kind of read the room together and introduce those elements and kind of, what would you say, manage the intensity, right? Over the hour or the hour and a half. And it'll be just kind of like essentially like an improvised experiment, right? And so that was the intention that went into the first one. You know, sounded great, felt great. It was very much like I know this can sound a bit woo-woo, right? But like an energetic exchange between myself and watching people move to that music. It was really inspiring. And so I just started doing that regularly. And like I was saying to you before, I feel like session view is just so perfect for that, because if you're baked into an arrangement, you're kind of forcing people to start and stop based on where the track happens to be in terms of the duration of the song. And in a session kind of driven or a session centric way of making music, you're really freed up to punch in and out and move things around in relation to what's happening in front of you. So in a funny way, rather than the music informing the yoga, it's kind of more of a two-way street, you know? Right. So I do that regularly. I think the other thing that I really appreciate and really like about it is that it's a very different dynamic to like playing in a club or a bar. All right. So people are, people may or may not be interested. People are drinking, people are hanging out, and I love to do all those things. So that's not a, it's not a judgment of that at all. But people kind of, I'm not into that. I'm out of here. It's a very different mindset. The crew at the yoga and meditation studios, they're here for 75 minutes. They've made the time. I don't think there's too many drunk people in the class, right? People are generally like quite thoughtful about their health and their well-being and stuff. So they're very switched on, very engaged. And really appreciative, and that actually makes me feel better about it. Anyone who's played and I played a bunch of these kinds of shows as a teenager growing up. Anyone who's played like a crappy bar show to like 10 people, you can head home feeling kind of bad about the whole music thing, right? And that kind of bums you out. You're like, wow, really, is this what I want to be doing? I'm getting a lot of feedback from the universe to suggest that no one really cares about this, and in the yoga setting, people are stoked and very, very very, very appreciative and engaged, and that inspires me too. So yeah, it's as much for me as it is for them, but I think it's also like it's kind of a unique lane, and it's more I would say this, like I find it's probably more fun, for those reasons, because it's a little more adventurous. I love it's hard to put into words, but there's kind of like a terrifying component that I really enjoy, knowing that I don't for sure know what's going to happen. Yeah. I've got 40 minutes tonight to play or to compose a soundscape for a meditation. And look, I've got a loose idea of what's going to happen. I'm not going in blind, but I also don't know for sure what's going to happen. And that forces me to be present. That forces me to really engage. And also, like, I'm offering something that is not just pressing the space bar. It's not just coming. If that was the case, you should probably use a playlist. I probably don't need to be there, but there's a meaningful human input in that. So yeah, again, I'm conscious of getting too quasi spiritual, but I think it's a really cool way to bring together my interests, so music, yoga, people, connection. And it feels amazing. I feel super blissful afterwards. It's really, really rewarding for me.
No, I don't think that's too woo-woo or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, that's really like what you're doing when you're playing a show. You're exchanging energy with the crowd, and something that I've kind of found interestingly by doing like my like live electronic music compared to say playing in a band where we are generating everything on the spot, all the instruments are being played there. I found that like, even though my music might be, some of it's pre-recorded, I'm in session view too, but I've got like all the parts of my songs, I'm playing over it, I'm singing, I'm affecting it, and I'm arranging it. But a lot of the music is exactly the same drum beat. It's not like with the band where maybe the drummer played slower or faster, and that changed the feel. I've been really surprised to see how much the crowd matters in those cases, because I'm almost doing exactly the same thing. But depending on the audience and the feedback you get, like the feeling I get afterwards is totally changed. So I don't think that's strange at all. And this could be in a situation where people are dancing and it's a party atmosphere, but depending on what kind of vibe you're getting from the people, that same exact, recorded music is totally different.
Let me ask you this: when you play out like that, do you actually record the performance?
I usually do. I sometimes forget in the heat of the moment, but I usually do. Yeah, and it's I'll either do like a resample track in live, or you said to resample, it just records your main outs. Or I'll just record the entire session. Yeah. So this way, if I wanted to get in there, I could fix things up or something.
The reason I ask is because one thing I just think it's super cool is to record out the performance, and I typically do it as the whole session, like you were saying, because I noticed that when it actually changes the way I'm improvising and the way I'm playing in notes and stuff, and in a funny way, I actually feel like it's almost like crowdsourcing the creative direction, right? So here's 30 people in meditation. I know that I'm the way I play the music and the way I might perform some melody lines or something like that. That's not in a million years am I going to approach that the same way if I'm in a room by myself. So I'm kind of grateful to this group of 20, 30, 40, whatever people because they're actually shaping the writing process. And I did one last week and I was like, man, this melody is dope. And I was never, ever going to write this if I didn't put myself in this situation. So I'm probably not in a position to like credit everybody with royalties or anything. I don't think that's, I don't think it would amount to much anyway, but it's just a cool way to write in a sense, you know, just to have people in the room contributing to the energetic exchange and then capturing that. Yeah, so you know, I got lucky on recording something where just some of the melodies that were played in were just really lovely. But then not so long ago, I had a bit, like you said, a moment where I forgot to press record, which is so easily done, right? But then I hit capture in Live 10, and I got most of what I was hoping I'd collected. So you know, just being able to you know, quote unquote capture that stuff is powerful. And then you might bring that back to a writing session, and you know, it's just another way in. So I'm really interested in different ways I can kickstart that writing process. So sometimes, you know, I'll just be looking at kind of, I guess, interesting photography or images or poetry. It might be a film, but in this case, it was just, you know, the energy of being in a room with people and making sure I recorded that, because you know, it's hard to get 30 people in a room to write a song together, and in a strange way, we kind of managed to achieve that through that.
That's fun. That's a cool way to think of it too. I always think that even if like you're playing in a band and you're recording, say, and someone shows up, it's like they're participating, even if they're just sitting there. Like there's something happening. And it would be hard to say like, well, you know, like obviously I played the guitar that got recorded, but something about them affected the way we all did that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that feels really tangible in like in a yoga class or a meditation class. And I remember looking over, and you know, people meditate for a variety of reasons, but some, you know, I could see this one lady, and she was kind of she again, like, you know, looked a bit teary and clearly was having a pretty emotional experience. And I was like, that's actually shaping this in a big way. And so, yeah, I mean, that requires vulnerability too, right? Like to go ahead and perform in an improvisational setting. There's kind of like an honesty and a vulnerability and a risk associated with that is a little bit spooky, but in terms of the potential creative outcomes, like totally worth it in my view.
I enjoy the thrill of the risk, you know.
It's good, right? It feels
alive.
I feel alive when it's happening.
That's live performance, you know, whether it's, you know, I even remember the first time I played just my acoustic guitar without the band, and I was like, oh my God, like I've done like probably by then 100 shows, and then it's like, whoa, I'm like out here without any net, and there's no one to look at if I make a bad note, blame it on, you know. I could definitely see that's like a different sort of vulnerability and risk.
I love that, and you know what? I actually think I think that's super important for electronic music making in particular, because I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to mitigate risk.
Yes,
and I'm not saying that you should go in there with like a million things that could go totally pear-shaped, right? That's not probably good advice.
Yeah.
but I do think that I mean, one of the things that I think compels people to come to a show is to see someone or a group of people actually pull that off. Yes. That's impressive, you know? And so what do we want to leave up to chance, up to possibility that creates risk and excitement, so there's actually something to care about? Because I definitely I could definitely approach my live performances in a way that is pretty sterile, and it would actually be less stressful, probably, right? If I'm honest. But I think it would be also a lot less engaging. And so, yeah, I think it's appropriate to dial in a sufficient amount of excitement that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've been to shows, even with live bands, where there's so many backing tracks that you don't even know what you're hearing, what's being played, and I felt frustrated, like nothing's gonna go wrong here. This is like a guarantee, and you just leave it like, even if obviously there's a lot of talent and expertise that goes into that, but like you said, like you want a little bit of like, hey, this is happening now because these people are making it happen, and if they stop, if they go the wrong way, it's gonna change it, it's gonna go wrong, and that's the excitement of it. Like you said, like they're doing this, they're making this happen.
There's definitely a couple of things that could go wrong that I definitely think are worth avoiding. Like I would say, you want to make sure your interface works. You want to make sure your computer is behaving itself, right? Because those situations, and I've had a couple of kind of close encounters of the technological kind, right, that have been a bit scary. They're not fun risks. They're just like hair pulling. Oh my god, this is going to shit kind of risks, right? They're the ones that you want to address and troubleshoot well in advance. I think the risks around hitting the wrong note or triggering the wrong clip or using the wrong sound or something. I think if you're honest and real about what you're doing and your audience is engaged, I think there's more graciousness than people might assume. Like I remember watching the other day I saw a video. It was one of the dudes from Metallica like slipped over on stage or something, right? Like mid solo. It was pretty embarrassing, and it's kind of sucks that now the world gets to see when you slip over, right? Or fall off a festival stage, or
it's bad
whatever.
Enough 40,000 people saw it, and now it's
But you know what? Like, it wasn't like. And the show totally went on. Everyone, and it's funny that I've been referencing like Slayer and Metallica and stuff. I'm showing my like my misspent youth with these examples, but it was like it was cool. It was fine that people fell over, right? And I guess that links back to what we're talking about in terms of putting out music. Like your music may or may not be amazing. You may or may not fall over on stage, but people aren't going to care. And provided you get back up, I think. It's all good.
Well, sometimes when those things go wrong, that's a great chance to connect with the audience and be like, oh, like be a good sport about it. The worst thing is when something goes wrong and they get mad and it gets weird and awkward and, that's, but like, hey, if it happened, what are you going to do? This is the risk.
I think also that you're right in that if you can like, recover from that in an interesting or lighthearted or cool way, that's kind of like worth possibly more than just finishing the song as you hope to.
Yeah, it's a memory it's something the audience has now, and something you went through together, and it was kind of cool,
Yeah. So I'm hoping for a bit of that this evening. I'm definitely I've definitely done my due diligence on interfaces and computers, so it's
why
more
don't you
about
balance like a big glass of water right next to your computer?
I will say this, right? The yoga rooms occasionally are heated, okay,
So it gets hot.
Yeah, and you know what? I can tell you right now, like I don't mind being warm, and living in Australia, that's kind of like par for the course. But I can tell you that computers have a different relationship to heat. And there's occasionally situations where the CPU count in that top right hand corner is kind of makes me a little nervous, But but you've shared some great tips on how to reduce CPU load, and they were actually super helpful in anticipation for some of those shows. So I got to say thanks to you for that.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I know you're getting ready to go to work soon, so I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Not at all good.
Really fun talking to you. A lot of cool stuff. Again, a lot of things just kind of connecting in my head as we speak, which is always nice. And I appreciate just the sharing the ideas that have helped you be productive with your music, because that's the struggle that doesn't go away, I think. And even as I feel like I know a lot of this stuff, it's still something I have to fight with. And I have to remember or remind myself or see in a new light. So I think that's going to be helpful to a lot of people. It's been helpful to me. And I'm going to put a little sign that says outsource criticism somewhere in my room here.
Yeah, do that. And look, I'm happy to be one of those people if that's if that
Yeah, cool.
helps you out.
Thanks.
Let me know.
Yeah, same here.
Awesome, man.
Well, Drew, thanks so much. We can send people to, I think it's just mayhills.com.
.au.
Mayhills.com.au for Australia.
That's it, yeah.
So that's the best place, I think, for people to find you, right? And I found you by just writing Mayhills into Apple Music. Popped right up. And Instagram is mayhillsau.
Yeah. So shout out to my homeland. So yeah. It's totally cool. Mayhills.com.au links out to everything from there. And if it's been helpful, I'm stoked to have a conversation with you because this podcast has been super helpful to me. And it's actually just that I think we often as producers and artists are making a lot of music at home by ourselves. Mm-hmm. The podcast reminds me that there's a significant number of people in a community doing this, and I think the more opportunity we take to connect with each other and share those struggles and ideas, the better. So thank you for doing what you do.
My pleasure. Thank you for that. It's a big reason I started doing any of this stuff is just like to commiserate,
All right, man. Awesome.
All right. So thanks so much. Thank you everyone for listening. Go on down to mayhills.com.au and thanks a lot for listening. Have a great day.
Later.